If you've been looking for the next turn-based tactics game, well, Menace might just be the one. It's from the makers of Battle Brothers, who decided to go and make a game similar to XCOM 2 or Phoenix Point. Now, it might look very similar to those two, but trust me, it plays very different to any other turn-based tactical game I've ever played before. So if you're wondering whether Menace is for you, stick around, because I'll be breaking down the gameplay, squad mechanics, combat, and whether or not I was actually having fun. Spoiler: It's complicated. In case you didn't already know, Menace is about leading a strike force against an alien threat. You'll answer distress calls from across different worlds, train and equip infantry, deploy tanks and mechs, and then plan and execute missions in detailed turn-based battles. If all of that sounds like your kind of fun, then stay tuned. And if you end up enjoying this video, perhaps consider leaving a like or even subscribe to find more games to get lost in. Now, going in, I wasn't too sure what to expect. Was this going to be Battle Brothers in space? Was it going to be the long-lost XCOM 3? Well, turns out it's neither, though it does borrow some pieces from both. At its core, you're the commando of the TCRN Impetus, a massive ship patrolling the Wayback System. When a planet calls for help, you'll land, deploy some squads, and tackle procedurally generated missions ranging from wiping out pirates to saving civilians, to knocking out enemy outposts, and a whole lot more. So first up, I have to say a big thanks to Hooded Horse for sharing a key to an early build of this game. So just to note that this is more like a demo and I only got to play a small section. Some content was locked, but the early access launch coming out later this year promises multiple planets, biomes, and a lot of different mission types. Also, I just need to get this out of the way. Menace is not a cinematic opera like XCOM or even Gears Tactics. It's brutal, it leans hard into realism, and punishes your mistakes. If you're a fan of Battle Brothers, well, you're going to really enjoy this. And as you'll see later in the video with the combat, you'll either love it or just get annoyed by its brutal gameplay, which, like I said, is quite unlike anything I've experienced before. But before we jump into the action, I'll show you the ropes of planning a mission and setting up your team. This demo only allowed to choose 1 world and 3 missions, which as mentioned are just all procedurally generated. If you've played FTL Faster Than Light before, well, this setup will feel familiar. You're given branching mission paths and then you'll need to choose which one to tackle first. Honestly, it made it feel a bit more like a roguelike than anything else. You can see some info about these missions, like the objectives and rewards you'll be getting. However, a recent post on Steam, the devs Overhyped Studios did mention that they're reworking the reward system. So instead of choosing what rewards you'll get at the end, it'll be stuff taken from the battlefield instead. Then the next thing to set up is your squad, which you can either do next or you can just go into that specific squad screen. Now on the left of the screen, it shows you the map, what objectives you need to achieve and where the enemies are. And it looks a bit basic right now, but it can be upgraded later on. You can also move your squads around to give you a slight edge when approaching a mission. Now notice how I said squads there. See, unlike other turn-based tactics games like XCOM or Phoenix Point that have you managing a single team, Menace has you managing a group of squads, or a team of squads, a murder of squads, each with their own squad leader. Each of them are pre-made, they have their own set names, their voices, their backgrounds, and their own perk trees. In your team, you have this pool of promotion points that is shared amongst everyone after you successfully complete a mission. It doesn't matter how well certain squads do, you can just dish out these points to whoever you want. Now, I wasn't really a fan of this. Like, I love it when someone did really well and they are rewarded or they're leveled up in some way. But hey, the perks did make up for it. Now these perk trees are unique to each squad leader. Some leaders are more for stealth, while others are more for taking down the front line, and there's enough flexibility in each of these skill trees to keep everything interesting. Like the promotion points, your gear is also shared amongst your team, so not everyone can equip the same sniper rifles or have the best armor. Maybe later down the line you can have more of these same weapons, but here I could only assign 1 per leader. Your squad leaders naturally will be managing a bunch of squad members, or squaddies as they're called in Menace, and yes, you can rename them. I gave them the names of my channel members, so if you become a member, you'll also might see your name pop up too in other games, but unlike my channel members, these squaddies have no personalities, they're replaceable, and they're basically just human meat shields. Now you might have noticed a little bar growing in the bottom right corner. That's the total capacity of the ship, which I guess varies every mission. So to make this game more challenging, you can't give everyone the best armor and weapons. It'll just make it too heavy for the ship, and I guess it just can't work. This means that your vehicle lady will have most of the weight, like those ATV or the tanks are just so heavy. So even before any action starts, you have to spend more time planning on who gets what armor, what weapons they'll use, how many squaddies you'll have on each team, and so on. Overall, it's very different to games I'm used to, and I had to keep reminding myself of that. This isn't XCOM, this isn't Phoenix Point. It's a brutal strategy game where even the mission startup requires tons of planning. I will miss customizing my characters, but this lot are pretty badass, especially when it comes to the battles. Alright, now let's talk about that combat, because this is where Menace both shines and frustrates. If you're still here, good, because there's a lot going on that'll be new to most strategy fans out there. As you know, the gameplay is turn-based. You'll move around your squad, then the enemy moves, and then rinse and repeat. However, because the only real indicator is the top UI showing whose turn it is, it did take me a little longer than expected to grasp this. I think it was because the enemy moves almost instantly off screen, so I felt like I was moving my whole faction before it was the enemy's turn. But now I finally get it. It goes a little like this. You go, the other faction goes, maybe another faction goes, and then it's you again. However, once your moves are up, as shown at the top, then the other factions continue moving amongst themselves, and then the round is finally over, and it then is your turn again. Also note that Menace uses the AP or action point system when performing moves. Everything counts, even just crouching, so you really need to choose your moves wisely. Anyways, you start moving your squads forward in this massive randomly generated map. And yes, they are pretty big, like sometimes you have to do a few moves just before you see any enemies at all, as it's all cloaked with that fog of war, meaning enemies can appear out of nowhere. Turn-based lovers will instantly want to hug the walls of buildings or just hide behind any sort of cover, but don't expect the generosity from previous games in the genre. In Menace, cover is all but an illusion. Unless you're tucked behind an actual building or structure, you're basically exposed. This design decision ramps up the difficulty, which also means you'll spend half the battle feeling naked on the battlefield. Like, for the most part, if you're within range of the enemy weapons, even if you're behind multiple objects that look like cover, they can hit you. It was very confusing at first, but at least it works both ways. So cover still works, like I'm sure some cover is better than nothing, but just don't expect it to be very helpful like other turn-based games. Weapons also behave very differently than you'd come to expect. Your standard rifle works like pretty fine, but the secondary weapons are game changers. Most times you need to crouch before you can use them, but they are insane. Like a well-placed rocket can wipe out an entire squad. But note that ammo is scarce, and even snipers can run out of bullets very early on. So many times I just ran out of ammo, and you can't find any ammo drops on the battlefield. So again, you need to plan. And unlike other games that come with shooting, distance matters in a way that you wouldn't expect. Sometimes being further away increases the accuracy and the damage of that weapon. I guess it makes the game more realistic, but that alone took me several failed runs to grasp, until I started looking at those graphs in the weapon info, so take note of those. But after 6 or 20 attempts of playing this demo, eventually it all fell into place. Every decision I made, from my squad size to my weapons to just the way I moved, it was all calculated and it was insane. Only then did the combat make sense, and only then did I start really enjoying myself. Like when you're surrounded, and trust me, that will happen a lot, the action gets very intense. I love just suppressing or pinning down the enemy squads, then flanking them from the sides. It was glorious. It felt very different from other turn-based games I've played. It felt more like a real-time strategy with these big maps and your multiple squads, unsure where the enemy will come from next. And to me, it felt very cool having so much space to plan out your attacks. I do wish I could get on top of buildings though. Like having a sniper team on top of a tower would be amazing. When it comes to the visual design, I really enjoy the look and feel of Menace. It's got this gritty modern look to it, and I always enjoyed zooming in both on my team and onto the enemy, especially when one of my snipers takes off a pirate's head. I will say that sometimes, especially in the desert regions, which was most of this demo, enemies can be hard to see. I would sometimes forget where they weren't easily marked, and I would forget about them and then they would flank me and take me out. It was not fun. And like I said, everything in this game needs to be calculated. If you just want to run in like Rambo, you will be punished. If your squad takes too many hits, your squad leader will go down, and you've got a few turns just to revive them. But if they're gone for good, and you will feel that loss for the rest of the campaign, or until I guess you get some more squad leaders. Something else I really enjoyed was the audio and sound effects. The weapon sounds are done really well, they're very realistic. However, I didn't enjoy the fact that I could hear some of these loud noises from across the map, like bullets that sounded like they were just whizzing past my ear. It was a bit weird.
Alright, no more trick shots!
Lock it in.
I do think it needs some tweaking, but I did really enjoy the voice chatter and the conversations between my squad leaders. That was really great. It feels like they're part of this team, and the dialogue was pretty funny at times too.
Punching up, are we? Hey, don't get hit! Shut the fuck up.
Also, the enemies can talk too. At first, it's cool hearing these pirates complain or taunt you mid-fight, but since it's clearly just one voice actor, the immersion can break after a while. Fighting what feels like the same pirate again and again just isn't ideal.
Lick my sack! I missed? From this distance? Hey, no, stop!
Overall, the combat is challenging. It's not impossible, but I felt like I needed multiple playthroughs until I understood what was actually going on. In the end though, I got the hang of it and really enjoyed it, despite some of the issues mentioned above. And after all of this, where do I stand? Honestly, Menace wasn't quite the game I thought it would be. Some parts I really enjoyed, the squad dynamics, the mix of vehicles and infantry, the way one wrong move can completely flip a mission, and for the most part the combat is just so intense. That tension kept me on edge, and when I pulled off a clever flank or a perfectly timed rocket, the payoff was huge. But there are still some issues with the game that might put some players off, especially if they're expecting XCOM 3, which this isn't. Some of the UI still needs some tweaking, and same goes for the audio design in some places. But overall, Menace is looking solid and I can't wait for the full release. But what are your thoughts? Are you still as hyped as before? Are you even more hyped? Less so? Let me know in the comment section below. I always enjoy hearing your perspectives. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like or subscribe to find more games to get lost in. But other than that, it's Marco here from Easily Distracted Games, and as always, don't stop gaming.